Thank you, everybody, for joining us. This is the virtual reception celebrating an exhibition currently on view at Cumaica Coffee, which is in the Excelsior neighborhood. My co-host, Malay, is going to be dropping some info in the chat for you, for those of you who are local and would like to go see these pieces in person if you haven't already. She'll be sharing the address with you. And this exhibition forms part of our Art in Neighborhoods program, which brings art into unexpected locations across San Francisco. So some of our partner venues, in addition to Cumaica Coffee, which is a cafe, have included bowling alleys, restaurants, hotels. So what we're doing with the program is we want to create these artful moments where people who may not be attracted or thinking about stepping foot into like a white walls gallery can still have those moments where they can interact with creativity and see and really experience the beauty of art, and especially celebrating our local San Francisco Bay Area artists. So that is our Art Neighborhoods program. And we are going to start tonight with a conversation with Shrey Purohit. And so welcome, Shrey. Oh, really quick, that's the information for Cumaica Coffee, sorry. And here we go, Shrey. Hi.
Hello.
I believe you should be spotlighted by now, so welcome and thank you everybody who's here from as far as India. I heard somebody who's here from Toronto to support Shrey, so that's all very exciting. And one of the things I really love about Shrey when I found out more about him is that he has been spending part of the pandemic plein air painting and capturing moments in the city and these quiet streets out in the open. And so, Shrey, can you tell us a little bit about painting out in the open and picking your locations and your experiences doing that?
So before the pandemic, I was kind of in school trying to be a political illustrator. And then I was kind of finishing off a thesis project that was kind of really depressing and sad. And then the pandemic hit, and then I was also really depressed and sad in the pandemic. So the two factors combined, I kind of was so kind of hit with the idea that we have to stay indoors for so long. So all I would try to do is try to go out 2-3 hours, capture the outdoors, and try to figure out a way to take that indoors because I'm going to spend the next 23 hours indoors. So it was a great kind of way to be outdoors and be really observant, be really kind of conscious of the limited time I have outside, and try to figure out a way to take it back to share with my friends, family, neighbors, and to kind of experience a common or share a common experience that all my neighbors have walking through the neighborhoods. And I pick my subjects based on usually the lighting, but I also think about the socio and political context of all the objects that I'm painting. Like this Lakeside Medical Center was used to be a pharmacy, but it's empty now because it's kind of this neighborhood that I live in, Ocean Avenue. The big stores really don't um, put in enough money. Like the Target that we have just shut down or is going to shut down because it's just not enough demand for them to survive. So it's interesting to see empty places that were once popular businesses but now are empty spaces. And it's so ironic or not ironic, I don't know what the appropriate word is. This place got broken into the next day after I painted it. So one of those windows were broken the next day. And it was really kind of surreal thinking of how I was there the day before painting it, and now it was kind of broken into with broken glass. And so yeah, I think about those certain things, and then kind of life throws things at me, like the piece of like the vaccination drive piece that I have here. It's like it's so funny that the vaccination drive is happening right behind my house, that I could just go there and paint, and it was, I think, life throws subjects at me and I have to kind of go and catch them. So that's kind of my process.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that with us, Shrey. And I mean, looking at your works, you're picking these buildings, these two pieces that I'm showing now
Mm-hmm.
are, they're very focused on the architecture. And I'm curious,
Mm-hmm.
like, why these specific buildings? I know you mentioned light, but is it anything about the structure, or like does it even matter what the building is? Like, can you speak to
I
that?
think it it I mean, if you could see, these effects would kind of be happening everywhere at the same time, right? So choosing the building kind of does make a difference, because especially with this large city college building that, in context of now, pandemic is empty but used to host so much of people learning and doing stuff. So it kind of uh, I was thinking of like hope that is kind of blurry. It's like you see the hope but it's not really there in focus. And I was also thinking of the vaccination drive, because I painted this the first couple weeks that I got to America from India, and the vaccinations had just started, and I was really thinking of hope and thinking of like uh, the kind of light at the end of the tunnel. So in some cases, it does make make a difference what the object or the building is, and sometimes it doesn't.
And have you been doing your, I believe you consider yourself a plein air painter, and you
Hmm.
just mentioned how these two pieces were made a couple weeks after you arrived to San Francisco from India.
Hmm.
So like, I guess my question is, have you been plein air painting prior, when there has been more of that hustle and bustle of like a city life, or like
Hmm.
people walking back and forth? And if so, reflecting on that and now thinking about these, uh, things are changing now because the vaccinations coming out.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
there was a moment in time that you mentioned where it's like this piece, Misty Sunrise, like it's so peaceful, it's so
Hmm.
vacant. There are no people here. So
Hmm. Hmm.
can you speak about those two experiences of painting when there is that commotion
People.
versus now this new reality we're living in, where it's
Hmm.
more of a vast and a calmness?
Hmm. Yeah, I think definitely was trying to capture that like vastness and the contrast. Like even this piece, right? If this was kind of when the CCSF college was happening and bustling, there'd be students everywhere on this lawn, everywhere, and there'd be no space, and there'd just be things happening. But now it's just empty. Nobody's here besides the trees and the grass and the coyotes. But uh, yeah, kind of. Uh, Sorry, I forgot what the question was.
Just the two different experiences. And I guess what is the
Yeah.
most notable? Like, I when I see plein air painters, I think about like, oh, I wonder how many people come up and may interrupt your process to inquire a little bit more, and
Hmm.
like your different
I
experiences within that.
I've found friends who get really annoyed, and I honestly love people coming up and talking to me, because I think they're equally part of the painting as the things that I left out. Because even though I'm outdoor painting, I have to make a selection of a square or a rectangle, and I have to stick with that. But there is so much happening beyond that. That kind of is the feeling of the painting, and I love people interacting with me, because they end up telling me more about the locations than I knew before. Because most people may not have uh, the artistic skill, but they have the artistic vision, and they have the context for things that they look around and find beautiful for. So most of the times I'm really fascinated with what people tell me. So kind of when I'm painting, I'm kind of interested in people coming and talking to me, because then I can find out more of why they relate to this neighborhood and kind of incorporate that into the painting.
Shrey, we have a question from the chat. It says,
Hmm.
your paintings feel like a hybrid of paintings and a photo between
Hmm.
these two worlds. Is this intentional in your work?
I think yes, it is intentional, uh, because we do have access to cameras, and we also do have access to paints, and kind of going taking a photo is uh, one level deep, but painting that photo and interpreting it and changing and reflecting definitely helps. Like my process varies. Some of the paintings here that I've done is completely on site. Some of them I've done on site, and then over a span of 3 months, I've changed it up. Like this painting, I initially painted it in December of last year, 2020, when I was in Mumbai. When I first landed to Mumbai, this is the first, maybe the next day after I landed, that I painted this painting early morning, because there's something about being in Mumbai that my body just wakes up at 6 a.m. and wants to go and paint. So I painted this to think of how I had graduated from CCA and how now I'm taking on this kind of painter life. But I was also thinking of the Impressionists that did this over 120 years ago and what they were going through in their minds when they were kind of thinking about camera, because they were kind of at the edge of when the camera was first getting popular, and they also had access to that, and a lot of people at that time were also questioning, would there be a reason to have landscape art if you have a camera? But I think there is some beauty in going beyond the photo and going uh, beyond plein air and beyond photo, so kind of hybrid.
Thank you, Shrey, and thank
Mm-hmm.
you for the Inquirer. And I really love this piece. I love the colors. I love the vibrancy of it. And I was going to ask, where is it? But you just told us that this was in July. And
Mm-hmm.
I want you to speak about the title, The Sun Will Rise, So Will You. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So I kind of think of inspiring people, and I think of inspiring myself a lot through my paintings. And graduating graduating in December in the first year of the pandemic kind of was a, a, a interesting way to graduate, and I could have made it my choice to be and say that, oh, this time is so bad, it sucks, it sucks. But I could also be like, okay, the sun is set, okay, the sun will rise again, and like the sun will rise, we too can rise, and we always have the opportunity to refresh the day and just go fresh again. Just the sun will rise and we will rise again with it. And kind of is like a comforting painting to me, to tell me that kind of life is like this up and down cyclic nature of uh, happiness and sadness. And to get through that, painting is great help. So that's why I kind of titled it Sun Will Rise and So Will You. And yeah, that's why I titled that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Shrey. And we have one more piece in this exhibition that I would like to share with all of you. Warm Fall Day in San Francisco, or rather in SF. And I love hearing you now speak about your works and speaking about traveling, whether it be in India or here in California or elsewhere. I get the sense that you arrive in a place and you're kind of exploring this new location, this new habitat through your pieces and through your paintings. So I guess my question is, one, where in San Francisco are we here? And two, can you speak a little bit more about this, using art as a way to connect with your new environments and your new surroundings?
Definitely. So this painting, so Warm Fall Day in SF, stands for St. Francis Wood and not San Francisco. But I was thinking like this neighborhood, St. Francis Wood, was one of the first kind of large scale organized neighborhoods in the West, or like kind of in America. And that was kind of inspired from the French way of building houses and French way of designing, but also kind of Americanized. So I really like these neighborhoods, St. Francis Wood, because it's really well planned. And even though it's on a mountainous region where it goes up and down like San Francisco is, the buildings kind of morph with the land structures. Like even if you see that house on the left is kind of on a raised platform, and it's kind of really interesting because there's so much greenery and like space. And what drew me most to this neighborhood is that um, the shadows at sunset become so long from the previous houses. So I was kind of standing looking, uh, kind of when you're crossing the street, and you could see the shadows from the houses behind you falling on, and it kind of, as time passes by, they like keep creeping up the hill and keep repeating. And it's really, really cool to see when it happens. And I think that's the charm of this neighborhood, is just like either sunrise or sunset, the shadows become really long and the trees look just stunning. So this is why I love painting in St. Francis Wood. And this is one of maybe 10, 12 paintings that I've done in St. Francis Wood. And they're all kind of in this intersection. I've painted, you see, if you see where the palm tree's base is, I've set up there and painted. I have a patron who lives in that house who let me set up there and paint from that house. I set up on the other side where where this other person's house was. So it's really, uh, really fun painting this neighborhood because everyone thinks has seen my previous paintings and is always excited to see what I'm creating and are always kind of supporting me. And yeah, I love connecting with my neighbors because people around me can relate to the paintings that I create, sometimes more than me because they have more memories associated with these places. And I love hearing and listening to those memories that people have associated with these particular buildings or particular trees or particular walks. So yeah, that's pretty much what my art practice is about, is capturing light and beauty in our common surroundings and searching for these cool cool vantage points or cool perspectives.
Yes, I love that you're really highlighting these, what one might see as like a mundane, they're everyday.
Mm-hmm.
And to hear that residents in the neighborhood really appreciate that, it's like you're bringing attention to something.
Mm-hmm.
And it can, you don't appreciate what you have, until somebody else comes in and frames it in such a way for you to really see the beauty of it. And that's what your pieces seem to be about. And so thank you so much for sharing them with us. So Shrey, I'm going to allow Malay to unspotlight you so we can welcome our next artist, Rachel Tirosh. Rachel is an awesome abstract painter, and I'm going to let her do a little mini introduction to her work. Rachel, are you with us? I'm not seeing you.
Yes, I'm here.
There you are. Hi, Rachel. Welcome.
Hi, everyone.
Rachel, can you tell us a bit about your artistic practice as an abstract artist and what your process is to begin a piece?
So, hi, everyone. I'm abstract. I cannot draw, so I just make things arbitrary, and then hopefully I see something in them. So I love to work with the texture. That's my main thing, the texture. So I start almost every piece. I start with putting paper on the canvas, or a lot of time I work with boards. Papers, I have some examples. So I like to work with I don't know if people know that, it's called data sheets. And this is a homage to my previous career, that I was an electrical engineer. And the days before internet, we used to work with the data sheets. The data sheets are explaining what the electronic, the chip is doing. So now I don't care what they're doing, but I love the marks, all the marks that they have. And another thing that I love music, so I use data music sheets. I use maps a lot, maybe because I like to travel or I inspire to travel, but sometimes I can only put it on the canvas. And another paper that I really like is the sewing pattern paper. It's like this. It also has those marks that if you are sewing a cloth, they have meaning, but then I just use it. And it's very durable, and I like that it's translucent, but it's also very hard because you need to work with it. So this is a lot of paper, and also corrugated cardboards. This is actually from Pete's Coffee, but a lot of Amazon boxes are in my paintings. So this is the texture, and something that I really I worked a lot, especially in the Behind All That series and also other series, is spackle. This is spackle. Because I use a lot, I buy it in Home Depot or stuff like that, not in an art store. And it's like sculpting on the 2D. And after that, it's the paint. The paint is just acrylic paint. And of course, there is no really specific process. It's just layering. I can have layers of paper and color, and then another layer of paper, which just until the painting like speaks to me. I see something. And then after that, when I put it outside, up into the world, someone else can see something else. And this is the most enjoyable moment when I do art fairs and I speak to people and I hear what they see. That's always very exciting. So when I title a painting, it's just what I see after the fact. I never know what I'm going to do. I never know what will happen. It can start something else and it can finish something completely different. So it takes me a while to work on a painting, and that's why I work on many paintings on the same in parallel. So I can switch between them. I can talk to them. I can talk to me, and it's a lot of conversation going on here in the studio.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rachel. I can't believe how many different items are going into these pieces. And it speaks so much to how, I mean, everybody should see all of these pieces in person, but I can imagine the textural elements of these canvases. You can't truly appreciate them until you can be there in person to see the hidden cardboard, or maybe not even see them, but just see the effect that they are having within the grander piece. And it, you talk about how you keep going and you keep building until you feel that the piece is finished. How is that? I feel like that would be quite difficult. Have you ever felt that you might have overworked a piece? How do you go about deciding that the piece is finished?
Yeah, that's the hardest. To start a piece, it's very easy. I can just put there is no right or wrong. I'm saying that as a hardware engineer, there are really rules. Like you cannot just invent something do something outside the rules, because electricity is electricity. So there is right or wrong, the on or off. But here, with painting, I can do whatever I want. There is no right or wrong. I can, if I don't like something, I can put over it. I can put over paper. I can put a color, and nobody will know. There is no spec. There is no nothing that I need to submit for approval. So it's only my approval. If I can see balance, I see something. It's just like a memory invoke in me, a feeling. So that's when I decide. And also sometimes I consult with the other artists if they think it's finished, if they see something, and I can take it in, or I can change something. And there are some cases that I thought it's finished, and then after a few months I brought it back to the studio. No, you're not there yet. So yeah, it's very hard to finish. Sometimes you overwork, but also if you overwork and it looks muddy, there can be another layer of paper, and you can start from scratch. No, and I can sand it also. I use a lot of sander. So there is endless possibilities. That's what's so fun about it. So it's so much freedom.
Awesome.
We have
Yeah.
a question in the chat real quick. Someone wants to know how long it took you to create that last work.
This one?
Yep.
I don't know, like Picasso said, all my life. I don't know. It was a lot. It was a long process, because there is this conversation, and I work with on many pieces at the same time. So there is no like start to finish. But when I remember I had lots of colors underneath, but when I covered it with white, I said, yes, that's it. And that's it.
That's a bold move, coloring with white after having so many layers of color. And so we have here behind all that city in white, and then we have your next piece behind all that sunrise. And I know you mentioned that that part of your process is you're not quite sure where you're headed, but somewhere along the way, an image or a memory or some sort of imagery is evoked. And so that speaks to your titles. Can you, I guess, tell me about these, both of these pieces, they're part of a series. They have these lines, these bold lines, and I can't tell, I have to admit, I haven't seen these pieces in person. I'm super curious what material these are. To me on the screen, they look three-dimensional, but what is this? And does the rest of the Behind All That series have this uniformity of these linear figures appearing throughout them?
Yeah, so Behind All That series was inspired by a line from a poem from an Israeli poet that I really like. His name is Yehuda Amichai. I don't know how to say it in English. And I didn't find many translations. But he has a line in his one of his poems, like, behind all that there is great happiness. And I thought that this is describing my art. There is a lot of behind all that. There is a lot of history, because I do layering. I put paper underneath. I put a lot of paper that have some meaning, and then I cover them, I expose them. So there is a behind all that. And for me, it is happiness, because I switch from engineering to art, and it's just freed me and lowered my stress, and it was like new life. So the series I did for an exhibition in 2019 in a gallery that I was part of, and I had, I don't know, maybe I have now like maybe 15. I had a lot of these kind of paintings, and each painting was a different color scheme. So this is the purple I had behind me. It's like more blue. I had more blue and green and yellow, and red. And so each one like orange, And my purpose was to have those. I started with data sheets and music. Each one is different theme, and then the sewing paper, and then I covered part of it with a sparkle, and I like carved the sparkle. I can show you. I worked with these tools that usually you find that you do something else with them, but I can carve, I can scratch, I can. It's very physical and it's very rewarding. So I exposed some of the papers underneath. I exposed them, and there is always like a window or a door. Someone told me like it's a window for possibilities. The areas without the sparkle. Um, the white is also it's a dry pigment that I use a lot with water, and this is like I can splash the water all around, and the water with the pigment goes into the cracks of the texture, and it enhances it. And as a last gesture, I wanted to have like my marks. So the marks are 3D. I use like reed, and I painted it with black. And these are like lines. Because it's texture, it's hard to make lines. So this is a 3D line on a 3D painting. So that this is how I created this series.
I love it. I love that thank you for sharing your tools. It's good. It helps, visualize your process that you talked about. I mean, it sounds so visceral and like and physical, and that you're really in there creating these pieces. And you mentioned a couple of times now that you come from a background in electrical engineering. When did art enter your life? Was art always a part? I guess, was your creativity or your feeling of being an artist or feeling of being creative, was that always a part of your life, or is this something that was a discovery somewhere along the way and a shift?
Well, creativity was always part of my life, and for a long time I told myself, design engineer. I was designing the electrical boards. It was also creative. Because it was also physical, because I was also in the lab debugging the systems that I designed. So you have to think outside the box. You have to be creative. But I never thought that I will be a painter. But life changed, and the needs change, and I found myself in painting, and I went toward abstraction, and this is where I found my voice. So I'm really glad I found it, and I'm really glad that I had the opportunity to do that with my support of my family. Otherwise, maybe I need to still work as an engineer.
Thank you, Rachel.
I couldn't divide myself between kids and family and the full-time job demanding in the Bay Area, and also be creative other ways. So.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. And, here we're looking at one of your pieces, Passage of Life. For me, the most attractive part of this piece, I mean, like immediately your eye goes to that bold orange horizon line. And I'm really curious about like the buildup between, you have all these textures, and then within your series, we also have these, the swirls that come in and these linear elements. And so where is your, at what point are you guided one way or another? Like, this one feels a little more realistic to me than your previous two pieces, to me personally. So I'm curious about a little bit about your process there and your color choices as you're building these works.
Yeah, actually, this was like I worked together on 3 pieces. Actually, one piece was sold at ArtSpan fundraising 2 years ago.
Thank you.
Yeah. So all the swirls, it's all texture. It's all this paper that crumbled because I started it just with I think I had a different vision. Like there is an element of like the horizon, and so I started with the papers and the white, and underneath it's like in dark paper. It's like I think I had paper that I scribble with ink, black ink. So I just used it, and I look at all of them. I put them together, and I always like some element of surprise. And I just took like directly from the tube. I just did like a line all over them, and it says it's like, and then it struck me. It's like this passage of in life that we just decide on a path to ourselves, and we just go there, and this is the story behind that, and I really liked it. It's like, yes, that's it. There is, I think these 3 I didn't spend so much because it's the red line made it. And if the first painting that someone asked how much time it took me to do, the first behind all that, the white, it took me a long time until I got it, but these 3 were like really, really fast.
That's so fascinating. And oops, we have one more piece, Longing for Connection. You know, and your titles just add one more element. Like if this is more of a comment than a question, like when, or rather, I'll make it a question. How would you, as an abstract artist, what would be your ideal viewer, as in, would you like somebody to encounter your piece not having known the title or anything about it first before reading into that? Because for me, you know, your last piece, Passage of Life, that added so much more to that orange streak across that canvas. And here, Longing for Connection, it makes it, you know, it gives me a new way of looking at this piece. Like it's a little bit of guidance. You're kind of holding my hand a little bit to like, okay, and see it. So I'm just curious, like if you have a preference either way, especially from the lens of an abstract painter.
Well, the titles are suggestions of what I see, what I feel about it, and I always encourage people to see what they see. For a long time, I just gave it a title, Still Life, because there was a time that I was obsessed with gourds, and I scrambled gourds, and so it's not an abstract way. But I think that the real title I gave it, like not long ago, because I felt people need connection, and these 2 like felt like they like with each other, or they like keeping each other safe. So for me, it doesn't matter if the person knows the title or not, because the title is part of me, and this painting is part of me. And someone that likes a painting, they like it for several reasons. They can see something that strikes them, and they can read the title. It's like a book. What is a book without a title? I don't know. I sometimes get offended when I see a big painting of abstract in a museum or gallery and say no title. you don't feel connected to the piece. You don't feel something about the piece. So this is my feeling about the piece, and people can take it or not. They can create another title for it. I encourage them to do that, because then they really see something really speaks to them. And I want my art to speak to other people.
Thank you, Rachel. And I just have one more question out of curiosity. You've shown us your tools. You've shown us the different layering elements that go into these pieces. And I'm curious if along the way, if there's a specific technique or surface or material that is like your favorite, like you're like, woo, that's like the special element that you add, or if it's kind of like, it's a surprise every time.
I just collect things. You don't see, but I have here boxes of different papers. The most I like is the spackle and the sewing paper. The sewing paper always saves me, because it creates a mystery. But really, anything. I'm always trying different things. There is no. I like to work on the wood, on the cradle wood. But really, I work on anything that I can get myself, get my hands on, whatever on sale.
Wonderful. Well, I'd like to invite Shrey back up here with us, if we can get Shrey back here spotlighted. And just to reiterate one more time that all of you can see these wonderful pieces in person at Cumaica Coffee on the Mission in San Francisco's Excelsior neighborhood. But if you're not yet able to go see these pieces physically, you're more than welcome to visit our online gallery at artspanart.org/Vein Gallery. And I cannot see Shrey. Shrey, are you spotlighted with us? Malay, can we get Shrey out here? And while
He's spotlighted.
Okay.
I guess I just need
You're here. I just can't see you. That's totally fine. As long as everybody else can see you, that's cool. And I just want to, if there are any questions for our artists, please feel free to send them in the chat, or unmute yourself if you feel so bold and confident and engaged with us tonight. And if not, I have another trick up my sleeve. So let's see. I'm gonna peruse the chat real quick. Okay. I think people are being
I have a quick question for Shrey. I know we briefly talked about it right before this started, but what exactly about that neighborhood struck you as something to paint? Because like you said, the stories from people that you've heard in the neighborhood have felt inspiring to you. And that was personally a walk I used to do from SF State to West Portal all the time. And it was very recognizable. So is it because you live around there? Is it because of just the shadows? If you could speak a little bit more to that.
It's definitely the proximity that I live around there. And I think I discovered it one of the times that I was like biking through the neighborhood, and I was surprisingly at sunset time biking through the neighborhood, and I passed at this particular time, and I had to like stop and like park my bike and click a lot of photos and reference images, and that kind of began my journey into painting, or starting to paint in St. Francis Wood, and then slowly discovering the history of the neighborhood and learning out that was kind of designed by the same people who did the Golden Gate Park, and figuring out that a lot of the suburban neighborhoods across America were modeled on this particular neighborhood, and kind of just finding out all these cool details about the neighborhood really inspired me to keep coming back and finding out more, and the neighbors that would walk around there, because like you said, the people would walk through these neighborhoods because they're so beautiful, and there's just so much happiness and joy you can see with all these trees, and it's like you're walking in a huge garden that just keeps uh, extending in every direction. So St. Francis Wood definitely has a part of my heart because I'm always searching for like beautiful houses that can just catch light and cast interesting shadows.
Totally. Yeah, very cool. Love that work.
Yeah.
Shrey, where do you think you're going to be painting next, or is there a certain spot or area? Do you explore, or is there a particular spot you want to check out in the near future?
I definitely want to go beyond San Francisco. I think I currently in my student age and this current age have been just San Francisco because I'm limited by where I can walk or where I can Uber to. So those are my kind of parameters right now. But I kind of want to go beyond that. But I'm having a show in May, which is kind of going to be based around Potrero Hill and that neighborhood. So I'm definitely going to be painting in Potrero Hill coming up.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I got a question. Since you have like experience kind of painting in two pretty different cultures like India and the United States, are there like things you've noticed that are like similar in that experience? And then also like what are things that you've noticed even like light quality and like colors that are different between the two places? Like how do you like express kind of like experiencing both in that kind of plein air way?
Yeah, it's very interesting thinking about both places and thinking about how when I kind of paint in Mumbai, I kind of leave out the figures because there's just so many figures or like constant hustle bustle because Mumbai is a packed city. And I kind of think of the contrast of here in San Francisco and why I paint these empty landscapes where there's kind of barely any people or no people. Especially in the start of the pandemic, I was really reflecting on how the pandemic isolated the already isolated San Francisco, kind of. And I would say what I think is the similarities is people love seeing an artist, and I love that's similar at both places. I always have people coming up to me and asking me, and I always love answering questions. I'm always down because the people around us uh, experience that place probably more often. Like I don't know, you remember when we went to Albany bulb painting together, there were so many people around us, and those people have so much of a regular history of just coming there all the time, so they probably can tell us more about it. And then a couple people did tell us like facts about the thing. So just the people around us have so much more knowledge than me as a outsider have, so I'm always grateful for that.
Hey Shrey, it's Mark and Maria.
Hey, thank you so much for coming.
I want to congratulate you on your exhibition and this event, but we would also like to offer you, since you mentioned that you would like to broaden your geographic horizons, we'd like to give you a standing invitation whenever you're able to come out here to Benicia. There's some really great scenes out here. We'd be happy to take you around and
I'm excited. I will take you up on that, definitely.
But congratulations.
Thank you so much. That's my teacher from CCA. I'm so grateful that you're here. You really inspired me to become a flaneur and an observer of the landscape. And thank you so much for your support and blessings.
And I just want to read, I'm scrolling through the chat, and for Rachel, I saw a comment in here from Pamela who said, with the title, "The Black at the Bottom makes me think of the afterlife." And I believe, Pamela, you can hop in here if you're still with us. I believe you're speaking about the piece, A Passage of Life.
Yes. Well, I said the afterlife. I didn't want to say the grave. I thought, but when it says the passage of life and you see this big black thing underneath, you think of the ground. So afterlife seemed to be a nicer way to put it.
Interesting. See?
Yeah. And Pamela, that gives us the perfect transition into what we were hoping to engage some of our guests with, was reflections on the pieces we presented tonight. And I'm happy to share my little slideshow again if anybody wants to revisit any of the pieces we saw tonight. But I'm curious to hear, and I'm sure both Shrey and Rachel are curious to hear from all of you, any comments, if not questions, about any of the pieces.
I have one last thing to add that kind of was similar in the piece you were just talking about applying paint directly to the canvas. I think the sun that I did also, I just took a big tube of paint and just applied it on top of that. And I think that's such a great commonality between both our paintings, that they have this kind of atmospheric environment, and they also have like really thick paint on it. So I'm really thankful to be exhibiting with you.
Yeah, I cannot paint like outside or in front of people, like because everybody's looking. That's not me. I need quiet. Not quiet, but not my space.
Mm-hmm.
And also, yeah, I cannot take all my stuff outside. So that's very different. Yeah.
Cup.
Yeah, painting outside, I found that my painting setup is now like 3 whole bags that I just take out, and I'm just like taking the whole studio out. But yeah, I can relate to that.
Thank you both. Does anybody have any comments, any shout outs, any questions? I mean, thank you everybody for joining us tonight in celebration of Rachel and Shrey. Their exhibition, if you're in California in the Bay Area, will be on view through June 9th at Cumaica Coffee, which is on Mission. I think it's 4726. But yeah, Cumaica Coffee is a wonderful little cafe in the Excelsior neighborhood. They have been incredibly supportive for, I believe, about 2 or 3 years now, participating in this program. So please, if you are in the San Francisco Bay Area, consider going there, not only to see these wonderful pieces in person, but to also to help support our local small businesses who have been struggling along with all of us during this weird pandemic time. Grab a coffee, grab a pastry, enjoy the art, sit outside. But yes, thank you all. And you are welcome. I think we're all still spotlighted, but I'm gonna unspotlight us and just bring us back to our group gallery view, and welcome anybody who would like to unmute themselves, turn their video on, to support our artists in any way audibly to show their appreciation for them. Thank you.
Wish Purohit, Shrey, and all wish you best of luck, and God bless you. Bro, you are doing well. Thank you.
Thank you, Balbir uncle. Thank you so much.